press the start streaming button on the live control panel.
Hello and welcome everyone inside the FITAID Lounge. My name is Tommy Marquez. I am your host for the weekend of what we are calling the Morning Chalk Up Show. I'm joined here by Brittany Klein, Justin LaFranco. The team you're looking at right here is going to be your team on the ground at the 2019 Reebok CrossFit Games, bringing you guys all the latest stats and updates. We're going to be coming to you guys quite a bit throughout the weekend. Just to give you guys a little bit of a heads up, here's a look into our coverage overview for the weekend. We're going to be coming to you guys 3 times each day. We're going to start in the morning. We're going to open things up alongside your favorite cup of coffee. We're going to give you guys a little bit of a preview into the day's events, as well as some things you can look to coming to you from the venue. Around midday, we're going to give you guys a little update just to kind of give you a break from competition and preview what's coming up towards the evening. This weekend is a little bit of vibe of the venue, and that's something that you've already been, kind of chasing down so far.
Absolutely, Tommy. I feel like I'm the best person to be doing this job. I guess you could call me a rookie at the CrossFit Games. This is my first time here. I'm like a kid in a candy store. I'm a CrossFitter from all the way down under in Australia, and already I'm having a blast.
And Justin, what other things can fans of the Morning Chalk Up really look forward to in terms of coverage this weekend?
So we're going to basically be doing morningchalkup.com. You'll always be able to go in, access. We have key stats on the leaderboard. We've built out a power ranking so you can track, and we'll get to that a little bit more later in the show. We're going to have live updated leaderboards. We're going to have live broadcasts brought to you by, live commentated in color with Rob Jeff Brightwell, excuse me. And we're just basically going to be keeping you informed on everything that's going on. We obviously know very little at this point, so best bet is go to morningchalkup.com, and we're going to keep you up to date.
So we'll be having live commentary, stats analysis, everything you guys will want, including reports from the field as well. Competition hasn't started yet, but athletes have been on site for a few days, and one of the biggest things that's kind of kicks off the CrossFit Games is the athlete check-in process. They get their info packets, they check in their coaches, and most importantly, they get their official CrossFit Reebok gear. All right, so we may be having some technical difficulties for you guys in just a second. So if we can get that package up and rolling, we will. You guys may or may not be seeing a package of athletes checking in right now, but just to give you guys a little bit of a clue, athletes check in, they get their official Reebok gear and includes shoes and shirts, but there are some new rules and regulations kind of surrounding the CrossFit Games right now. Brittany, and one of them is the likelihood that they can wear whatever footwear they want.
Well, for the first time, they've removed the shoe restriction. I guess that was a big thing, especially in the past for sponsored athletes, Nike, whatever. Now they can wear whatever they want. So in the lead up to the games, I spoke to a few brands about how they felt now that they can get their shoes on their athletes on the floor. And one of the big ones was Noble. As you know, they're a new brand on the scene, sponsoring athletes like Tia Claire Toomey, Captain David's daughter. And I don't know whether you know, a lot of our readers will know, but they offered all of the national champions, they reached out to them and offered them a pair of shoes. 93 athletes accepted. And I was talking to Todd Mullaney from Noble, who said that behind that, it was just to kind of give the athletes, like you said, Reebok give them this prize. It's, I guess, almost like a medal for the athletes who maybe are bubble athletes. They're not going to make it on the podium. They're not going to get any cash when they come to the games. But it's almost like a prize for them to have these new pairs of shoes. And I don't know whether you guys were trawling social media, but some of these national champions, they were stoked.
Yeah.
You know, they get a new pair of shoes. They're not sponsored athletes. So I think for a lot of brands, they've been pretty forward thinking about this. You know, CrossFit removes the restriction, and especially No Bills being one of the big ones that's just jumped in on it.
Yeah, and some athletes get to wear the footwear they probably normally wear every day in the box when they're training to get ready for the CrossFit Games. Now, Justin, one of the adjustments that we saw in terms of the rule book here was the inclusion of a wild card, and there were some athletes that we weren't expecting to see suddenly here at the CrossFit Games.
Yeah, absolutely. Like the beginning, just last week, we just sort of, Ben Smith made that post. He's like, hey, if I was to get an invite, I'd be ready to throw down. And sure enough, the community really rallied around him. We had a story that just kind of analyzed a little bit about, you know, some of the history of some of the wild cards. And you know, Ben, if you haven't been tracking, he had surgery January 30th to remove a little bit of scar tissue from his knee and fix some things up. And so now he's kind of back in full force, made this post. Rich Froning posted supporting him. We had athletes of all kinds and veteran athletes and supporting him. And so sure enough, CrossFit contacted him. We caught up with him a little bit at the athlete dinner last night. He was surprised to get it, but obviously excited to be here. And he's going to be going for his 11th straight individual appearance, which is actually, you know, that's the record. I think the next closest, I believe, is like 8.
Yeah, on the men's side, yeah, 8. Yep.
And
so
he's such a humble champion as well. You know, yesterday.
He's absolutely the most humble of anybody that's really out there, and probably one of the most deserving CrossFitters to receive a wild card invitation.
Yeah, it's the power of social media, and probably one of the most 2019 things that could possibly happen is that someone gets a Games invite via, you know, maybe a hashtag or something like that. But you mentioned the athlete dinner, and we have a package for you guys, but we may not be able to roll it, so we're just going to talk through it a little bit here. We were all on the ground at the athlete dinner last night. It's kind of a staple of the CrossFit Games process. Athletes check in, then there's a big dinner, and usually by now, if some workouts aren't already known, something gets announced. We got to be on the ground and talk to some of these athletes. We didn't get an announcement.
It was quite comical though.
Yeah, but what was the vibe for you guys at that athlete dinner?
I think it was good. You know, I mean, all of the athletes, a lot of people in the community were speculating, you know, oh, it sucks for the athletes. They're excited. I think they're pretty stoked for the unknown. CrossFit is the unknown and unknowable, so they're just embracing it, especially a lot of the veteran athletes. They're excited by this change and they're pretty much ready for anything.
And I got to give you some credit, Justin. You kind of called what was going to happen. We were on the car ride over and you had some speculation of your own.
Yeah, that's right. No, we were just walking over from the exhibition hall just after getting our press credentials. I was like, you know, what's probably going to end up happening is we're going to show up to the athlete dinner and Dave Casper is just going to get up there and do his thing, and he's going to say, you know, event 1 will be announced at a later date. And that's basically exactly what happened. And it's funny because I've guessed a lot of things between open announcements and what the workout's going to be and what to expect. The CrossFit Games have been wrong pretty much every single time. And then here's the one time that it turned out to be true, which is kind of comical. And I know that it left a lot of athletes just kind of disappointed that they weren't going to get anything to test or to chew on or to try out in the training hall today. But that's part of the CrossFit Games. This is part of the entry. And what makes it so much fun and what makes this really exciting is that they may be showing up tomorrow morning 30 minutes, an hour before they're going to throw down and find out what the workout is, but hey, got to be prepared.
Yeah, I mean, last year's Chaos event really certainly sets precedent for that.
Yeah.
I guess the announcement last night was that there was no announcement, and the rest of us in the press were kind of left scrambling for some answers here. But one thing we want to dive into a little bit, we're going to talk about just a little bit here and there. For Morning Chalk Up, one of the things that was new to this season was the creation of a power ranking system that you guys can find at morningchalkup.com. If you go to morningchalkup.com, you can click the global leaderboard tab in the upper right corner of your screen, and on that page there is a tab for power rankings. There are power rankings for men and women, and if you guys take a look at the power rankings, we'll start with the men's side. Top of the leaderboard, Matt Fraser in first, Pat Vellner in second, Brent Fikowski in third. Those are your top 3 men. But kind of, you guys have had a chance to take a look at this leaderboard. What really stands out to you guys on the men's side?
I think for me, what stands out is that nothing really stands out. There's no surprises there. You know, a lot of experience there in the power rankings, and that's what went into the power rankings. Look at how these athletes have performed over the last couple of years. And I mean, we'll get to predictions later, but I think we're seeing the unknown and unknowable this year at the Games, but you know, I don't think you can discredit Matt Fraser, Pat Vellner. They've always been at the top of the last couple of years, and they're going to be hard to beat.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to run through this a little bit because you can't show it up on the screen right now, but the way we've sort of analyzed this power ranking system is we've taken their performance over a period of time. We've thrown this into a really fancy calculator, and it's basically put out a bunch of numerical values. So we look at 2017, 2018 games performances. We look at the open, and then we also weigh the sanctionals. So we look at the depth of the field in each sanctional environment and say, okay, look, how competitive was this? You know, if you're going to go up against Patrick Vellner and Matt Frazier in a sanctional, it's a very competitive sanctional. If you perform in that crop of field, you basically earned a little bit more points on the scale. So we throw this into a fancy calculator, and then outputs these numerical values. So the top 5 on the men's side right now, according to our power rankings, is Matt Frazier, Patrick Vellner, Brent Fikowski, BKG, and Noah Olsen.
I like the fact that Noah Olsen's there. Correct me if I'm wrong, but he's never actually won a games event. Is that right?
Yeah, he doesn't have a games event. He's finished second a couple times, but he's never gotten that elusive games event win. So
he's always just there, eating away at it.
And he had a bit of a rocky start this year too. He didn't quite perform as well as he had wanted to. He didn't do as well in the open as he wanted to, but he got in nonetheless. And so that's where a little bit of this is. So you got to understand, like, power rankings. It's like, I may not have picked him for my number 5. You might have picked him for your number 5. But we really trust the numbers, and we let the numbers kind of dictate the outcome. The one surprise that I saw on the list, and something that probably needs to be caveated, is that Jacob Heppner is like 43rd or 44th on our list. Now,
I didn't even get down.
Jacob Heppner is an amazing and phenomenal athlete. He went down to Down Under CrossFit Championship, performed really well down there, got second place. He absolutely demolished the open, but his performance record is small over the last 2 seasons, as he's been absent from the 17, and he's absent from the 18 games, and so now he has a lot less data that we can use. So I think he's going to be a lot higher on that. I fully expect to see him very late in competition in Saturday, probably and possibly even Sunday if he remains healthy. And so there's one area where you're like, okay, that was a bit of a surprise. Wasn't expecting that.
yeah,
See, I was just going to say, I'll throw a spanner in the works there. We were expecting a little bit more from him in Down Under. We thought he'd come to Australia and completely annihilate the field. And he was beaten by a good friend of mine, Matt McLeod, who is a great athlete in his own right, but he's never been to the games before. And Matt really showed him up on the floor there. So I'll be interested to see how Jacob goes. Maybe it was jet lag, maybe it was, you know, who knows?
Yeah, well, taking a look at some of the criteria, just to kind of clue you guys in at home, one of the reasons why Jacob may have been so low is the data set that was used for these power rankings starts in 2017. So it used all of the 2017, 2018, and 2019 seasons. So the more recent data that's available for these athletes competition history-wise, it takes into account their 4 best finishes. So for Jacob, who last made the games in 2016, he's missing some of that crucial data despite a history of performing well and finishing 6th the last time we saw him at the games. Justin mentioned that we do factor in the elite athletes at the sanctionals, the depth of field, and the things that are valued the most were the games the last 2 years and then the sanctional competition. So if you're thinking maybe in-person competition is a little bit more important, well, that is reflected in these power rankings as well. So we're going to actually force Brittany, Justin, and myself to earn our money a little bit here, and we're going to take a look at our men's podium picks. Brittany, we'll start with you. Who are the top 3 men that you had going forward looking into the 2019
Well,
games?
I know there's no money on this, but I feel like it would be very silly for me not to put Matt Frazier at the top. He's in a class of his own, but I also think Pat Vellner's up there as well. You know, the two of them, we saw it at Rogue, the back and forth. It was exciting, and so I think they're my number 1 and 2. I like BKG for number 3. Numero 3 to round out the podium. I just think he's had an impressive performance anytime we've seen him this season. First in Reykjavik, I think he came 2nd in Dubai, 2nd in the Open. He's just been consistent every time we've seen him on the floor. That's mine.
Justin?
All right. So no real surprises here, except maybe a little surprise.
And I love this. I love it.
I have Matt Frazier, and I think that's a very solid pick. I'd put a lot of money on that, and I wish I actually could.
Yeah.
Patrick Vellner, very consistent performer. He's super hungry, and I like where he's been at this season. And my number 3 is going to probably shock the world. It's Ben Smith. And, look, Ben Smith.
That's a fairy tale finish.
Well, look, I said this last year. He's the only guy that's competing on the floor that's ever beat Matthew Frazier. He hasn't really been close recently. So again, but I think that he's taken this season in a much different stride. He has, he competed hard in Rogue and he competed hard at Granite Games, but he wasn't healthy. I talked to him and he feels great. I talked to one of his training partners, Adam Klink, at CrossFit Krypton, and he's like, if you were competing at a sanctional today, he would win it. That's what Adam says. Now Adam's a close friend, but nonetheless, I think that he's healthy and maybe the healthiest he's been in a while. So I think he has the experience and he knows what it takes to get to the podium. I would love to see him there, but I'm casting a bit of a strange net here. Ben Smith is my number 3.
I gotta say, I love it as a bold prediction. As a fan of Ben Smith, you know, I love the pick too, but
I got the beard.
Sometimes we pick with our hearts and not with our heads. So let's think about our heads here, and I'm gonna give you guys my podium picks. I'm actually identical as Brittany. My top 3, Matt Fraser, no surprise, Pat Vellner, no surprise. I think those two have really separated themselves into classes of their own, but distinct classes, Matt being number 1, obviously, and Pat being the clear number 2. I also think that for the 3rd spot, BKG has been incredibly consistent. I've actually had the chance to train with him in the last week, talk with his coach, Yami Tikkanen, the training plan. He says that one of the first times BKG is coming into the games completely healthy, no back issues, no knee issues, things that have plagued him in the past. The last time we saw him healthy, that was 2015. Well, guess what? He ended up on the podium. He won Murph. He was really kind of the surprise story of the games that year. In a year that Murph absolutely decimated the field, he really shone. So I think that's going to be my top 3 for there. I have to say I agree with Brittany pretty well.
That's a pretty smart pick, but you know.
Yeah. Hey,
I like to live wild.
Hey, you got to shoot your shot. Shoot or shoot.
That's absolutely right.
Switching over to the women's side now. So we're going to take a look at the power rankings based on the women's side. We have a graphic for you eventually. You'll hopefully be able to find that on Morning Chalk Up. But for the top spots for the women, no surprise, Tia-Clair Toomey at the top. And then, as we're accustomed to seeing, the top of the leaderboard occupied by a couple of daughters. Anything that stands out to you two?
I guess it's the same for me again. You're seeing the experience there, the daughters, they're all there, they've been here. That was another thing that really stood out to me from the athlete dinner as well. You really see the experience, people who are ready for anything, and I think this year that's going to be a real test. The athletes don't know what's ahead come tomorrow morning or the rest of the weekend, whether they're even going to make it to the weekend.
Right.
But yeah, just people like Sarah Sigmund's daughter, Catherine David's daughter, they just waltz in there, you know, and that's where they deserve to be in the power rankings, you know. They've been there for a long time, and I think that they'll be here for a few years to come.
Yeah, so I'm gonna run through the top 5 right here on the list. So we got Tia-Clair Toomey, number 1, Sarah Sigmund's daughter, number 2, Catherine David's daughter, Annie Thor's daughter, and then in 5th place is Carrie Pierce. So the couple of things that I saw that I think were really interesting here is that Danny Spiegel is all the way up in 11th.
Ooh.
No, she's the highest placed rookie on our prediction because she's been in so many sanctions this year and she's performed so consistently, even when the field is extremely tough. And that's again what this model assesses. And so if you're going to come and you're going to play 2nd or 3rd, and you're going to compete against a Sarah or a Tia, then you're going to be much higher on the list. The other number the athlete that I have a spot on is Laura Horvath, who drops in our list of 14. And I think that given her performances in some of the sanctions this year, and the fact that we only have 1 rookie performance from last year for data, it's not perhaps playing in her favor a little bit here. So she's somebody I have an eye on, and I think that, you know, that was a little bit of a surprise seeing her a little bit lower. I know a lot of people have put her as a pick much higher up on the list.
And this is one of the situations, Justin brings up a good point with Laura Horvath, where having 1 dropped out of Dubai and 2 basically been time capped, minimum work requirement at Rogue Invitational, not being able to continue. That's one of those things where the numbers will hit a little bit harder, but we can kind of use our eye test to determine that she has a little bit more fitness than that. She just has one particularly glaring weakness when you kick upside down and do some of those strict handstand push-ups. So moving on to podium picks for the women. Brittany, you're first.
Yeah.
Who are your top 3 women for the 2019 Games?
I've gone a bit rogue.
All right.
Sarah Sigmund's daughter, number 1. She looks good. You
All
know?
right. New champion.
Yeah, I think. Was it you talking to her coach, Phil Mansfield? You know, they're really working. They just sound like they're playing smart. I think he even said that he's seeing it like an Olympic, you know, a 3-year journey, and this is only year 1 for Sarah, but I think she's got what it takes. I think it'll be a tight race with Tia. Maybe we'll see similar to the 2017 women's competition of, you know, Cara and Tia right at the top, right till the end. I think it's going to be a great women's competition. So Tia's, I feel like I'm almost, you know, not patriotic, but I think Tia's number 2, very impressive. And my number 3 was Catherine David's daughter. Again, looking at our power rankings, people who are always consistent. Again, just last night at the athletes' dinner, she seems cool, calm, and collected, ready to take on whatever Dave Castro is going to throw at us. And yeah, that's my podium.
Okay. Well,
Justin?
We agree on one of these ones.
All right.
Well, actually, we agree on 2 of them. Sarah Sigmund's daughter is my number 1 pick. I like the way she's entered in this season. I like the way she has gone from being a little lack of confidence in her in the early part of the season to really strong.
She looks so good at Rogue.
And she looked so good in the Rogue. She did what she needed to do at strength and depth, taking the 1st place position. She won the overall open without it really being the goal of her training, and I love what she's coming into this competition looking like.
She'll be hungry as well after having.
She's super hungry, and that's a key element here, and that's just sort of like what Cara Saunders has talked about, like that different spark between just making it to the games and winning the games and what it takes to get into that position. Tia Toomey, my second place pick. She is so solid. She's performed this season in 2 sanctional events, and she's looking very hard to beat, but I think this is going to be Sarah's year, so I'm giving her the number 1. And then I like to go rogue, so Kristen Holta is my number 3 pick.
I like that one a lot too.
I like it because she's consistently risen over the last couple of years. Okay, so 7th in 2017, 7th in 2018. As the games has continued to get heavier and harder, she's continued to perform in the field. She won a sanctional this year, and she's consistently performed and attacked weaknesses in her offseason. Her coach CJ Martin works with her very closely. She's always out traveling and training with the Invictus crew. I like her trajectory. She always does well with unknown and unknowable, and she's a very capable and experienced athlete.
Yep, I like that pick. I was actually at the Asia CrossFit Championships, the event that she won. She looked solid through and through. Amazing. Both of you guys picking a new champ, and Sarah Sigmundsdottir. There must be something about the 3rd championship that's so elusive for the women. I'll give you guys my picks. At the top, I actually am a fan of making history, and that's going to be Tia Toomey walking away with the 3rd consecutive women's title.
I'd be happy for that to happen.
And not just 3 straight, but the first woman to win 3. Honestly, just looking at her performance, I think in the last couple of years, we've really seen her blossom into her own in terms of walking into a competition as the favorite and then being able to back that up with a dominant performance. She wins Wodapalooza, she won arguably the 2 strongest events in Wodapalooza and the Rogue Invitational. She had her best finish ever in the Worldwide Open. And just in talking to her with this season, the amount of benefit that she's gotten from training with Matt Fraser, who she basically moved to Cookville to train with full time, it's a whole different mentality when suddenly you're not the best in the room every single day. Her and Matt trading back and forth workouts and having someone that can legitimately push you, but isn't your actual competition come game day, does tons of things for your fitness when you're able to kind of set the ego aside there. And I think she's just going to showcase how much benefit she's gotten from training with Matt this weekend. Number 2, Sarah Sigmundsdottir for me. I agree with you guys. She looks probably the best she has since she came onto the scene in 2015. I got to train with her and Phil Mansfield a couple days ago. She looked as good as I've ever seen her. Her rest day absolutely smashed us. I love the mentality that Phil has taken with her in terms of, hey, she makes some mistakes. We're not going to try and erase the fact that she makes mistakes. However, we're going to build an athlete that can rebound from mistakes and capitalize despite that fact. And I think that's something that Sarah's been looking for to kind of take her to the next level. However, the best version of Sarah has still lost to Tia Toomey both times she's squared off against her. And I don't necessarily count the Open because in-person competition carries more weight for me. So I think she'll finish second and have her best finish ever at the CrossFit Games. Maybe another year before she's able to catch Tia. And last but certainly not least, I think the American streak of being locked out of the podium since 2014 ends this year. And for me, it's Amanda Barnhart. That's my kind of bold prediction.
She was so impressive when she came to Australia.
Yeah, she won the Down Under CrossFit Championship, beat Jamie Green, who was kind of the favorite going into that event. Last year as a rookie, won an event at the CrossFit Games in the Speed Clean event. To me, she has a lot of the tools to be a top-tier athlete. And I think after a year, having a year of the CrossFit Games under her belt, I think she's going to realize that she belongs. Start to take charge of more workouts when she gets to train with the comp train crew, Catherine David's daughter, Brooke Wells. And I think she has kind of a wild card in her back pocket if she does make it to Sunday, and we have this inkling based on some public records that you dug up, that we could see a swim event on Sunday. A collegiate swimmer, I believe at Cleveland State, so that's a nice little thing to have, just in case you need to pick up 90 or 100 points on Sunday. So yeah, those are my women's picks. Yeah, pretty exciting times. I think this is going to be the best women's competition that we've seen yet. Moving on, last but not least, certainly the teams. A lot looks a little bit different this year. We don't have power rankings for the teams, so we're just going to dive into our podium picks. Only 14 teams in the field. By Sunday, we'll only have 5. Who are your top 3 when everything shakes out?
It's going to be such a good team competition, just all of those stacked teams. My pick, though, is OC3. I think you can't get away with a team that's been together for a while. Often, I mean, we've seen the first event announced for the teams, which isn't so much of a teamwork, more so just grunt work. But when it gets to the later end of the weekend and we have to see teams working together, I think they're going to rise to the top. For the same reason, Mayhem will be number 2. You can't get past training together frequently. Number 3, I'm going to take Invictus. The likes of Christy Aramo, Margot Alvarez, we almost didn't see them come to the games. Sam Dancer, that they've managed to convince the girls to give it one last shot as a team. I don't know why. I'm just going to go with gut on this one. We say sometimes we go head, sometimes we go heart.
Yep.
I'm going heart with that one.
Yep.
Invictus X
Yep.
to round out the podium.
And just to clarify, Invictus has 3 teams on the team competition.
Yep.
So there's Invictus, Invictus X, and Invictus Boston. So be sure to pay attention throughout the weekend because you're going to see that Invictus logo up there quite a bit. Jayla, what are your picks?
All right, so I'm going with a team Invictus for number 1. I struggled with this more than I did with the individuals, and I think that's because these teams are so unique and stacked, and there's been a lot of changes to rosters too. You're qualifying with certain athletes who end up going individuals, and so I struggle with this a lot. I went with Invictus. That was just kind of my gut decision. And one of the reasons why Mayhem got second and not first was because I've seen their performance. They've struggled in 2 competitions specifically. One was Wadapalooza, and they had a little bit of a shakeup and a change after that one. And then the second one was at Rogue. I didn't feel like when they were stacking up well against some of the other teams. I think that they're going to, that the Mayhem march through events is not going to be easy for them this year. Now, sanctional programming, you could make an argument was a little bit more individual based, but Rogue I think was a very team-based event, and I did not see the kind of Mayhem team that I would expect to be standing at the top of the podium. My last one was Project X.
The Aussies.
This
The
team
Aussies.
has this tied for the most individual games experience collectively with Mayhem.
And also to say that as well, they've been working as a team, as soon as the teams were announced,
they
that
were,
you could
they
stack
were one
a
of those
team.
early teams that formed
And
right
they
at the
stayed
beginning.
together,
They knew
yeah.
exactly what they wanted to do. They wanted to go to the games, and they wanted to make a solid run at it. And they've been training for, what, 6, 7, 8 months together?
even longer than
and
that.
This is a star-studded cast of athletes that really knows how to perform. They have a lot of games experience, so nothing about this weekend should be new to them. And so I'm giving a little bit of a leg up to experience here, but every team is so stacked. It's unbelievable. I went through the list and I was like, you got to be kidding me. Like, this athlete's snatching this and clean and jerking this, and they've got, it's amazing. I think actually the team events will be some of the most exciting team competitions that we've seen this entire, in the last couple of years.
No doubt. I completely agree with you. I'm really excited to see what this new iteration of the team competition looks like now that we have fewer teams. We're cutting to lower numbers, and there's a little bit more creative freedom as far as programming goes with fewer teams on the field. So my top 3, again, I love history, so I'm going to make Mayhem Freedom the first team to win not only 3, but 4, which would be Rich Froning's 8th championship, if you can believe it, and his 10th time on the podium, which is just crazy. The one thing that I really like about Mayhem Freedom, despite their struggles at Wadapalooza, that was a different roster. And I think there's a little bit caveat to both. Their struggles at Rogue Invitational, slightly different programming. There wasn't a lot of team competition style programming there. A lot of different nuances like building a cart, things you might not see here that I think were kind of fun for the Rogue Invitational, but you might not see here at the games. I really like their nonverbal communication. I had a chance to watch them at the Asia CrossFit Championships. They ran away with it. They beat Project X. They beat the Torian team that had Royce Dunn at the time. I watched China Cho fit in seamlessly with them in terms of each one of those athletes at a different point in time took over the lead in terms of communicating to one another and being able to kind of dictate pace and cadence with things like the worm, like those rope climbs, reps on the barbell, and all of those things. And it paid off for them flawlessly. China Cho is such an experienced athlete, and she also has another thing like swimming that can help carry them in an event where they're typically not great at. And I think Mayhem is a team that's going to benefit from the point change as things go on. Remember, the point spread gets wider as the competition goes along and fewer teams are in the competition. Mayhem trains at a volume that is almost anyone as an individual will be challenged to keep up with. So as the competition goes along, they're going to get stronger relative to the peers that may get tired due to the overall training volume. So that being said, the second team is the team that beat them at Rogue Invitational that I actually think is a fantastic team in the sense that they've been almost the same roster for the last 4 or 5 years. That's OC3 Black. They've been training together since 2015 when they were actually Quad City CrossFit. They were actually the team that was beating Rich Froning's team Mayhem that won the CrossFit Games that year before an unfortunate kneecap injury derailed their hopes at regionals and they weren't able to make it to the CrossFit Games. I think they're probably the second best overall team in terms of cohesiveness, which is why they're going to finish second. My third pick, no one's talked about him yet. I'm kind of going out on a limb here just because I was hanging out with him with an RV park earlier this weekend, is the Don't Stop team with Travis Williams, Roy Gamboa, Jen Smith, and Alexis Johnson. Now this is a team that I think is getting better as the season goes along. They're learning how to become a team. As we see some of these events that are individual based and strength based, I think they're going to be one of the best because as far as the barbell goes, they're fantastic. And if you kind of pair any one of these individuals, all four of them have individual games experience, one of a few teams in the field to do that. The big question for them, because they just missed the podium last year when they were fourth, and they had Sheila Barden and some different athletes, Rachel Garibay, who's an individual now. I think the big thing for them is how are they going to handle the breakdowns as a team when they inevitably happen. So that could be the make or break thing for them, and maybe we see an Invictus team kind of pop up.
And just to touch on that as well, the first event for the teams has been announced.
Yeah.
Assault to Bob, 3 rounds, 18 to 25 calories on the bike, 30 toes to bar, and then the Bob push. So it'll be interesting to see. I mean, not too much teamwork there, but
yeah. So and just so everyone knows, that has been announced. You can find it at games.crossfit.com. The first team workout, the first workout of the individual or teams has been announced for the CrossFit Games. Interesting to note, all 4 athletes will be on the assault bike at the same time. All 4 athletes will be on the pull-up bar for the toes to bar at the same time, and then they'll have to push the Bob together in unison. So a little bit of mixture of individual work and teamwork to start the CrossFit Games. But one last thing before we go. One of my favorite things is making some bold predictions. Taking a look at the competition, and this is something we're going to hold you guys to it. We'll revisit at the end of the weekend and see how it fared out. Sometimes you just got to throw a line out there and see where it lands. What's one bold prediction that you think is going to happen for the CrossFit Games?
Well, we talked about this before. My bold prediction, just scrolling Instagram before, was Dave Castro as the wild card, but we decided that was a bit too bold. So I'm going to go back to the Jacob Heppner conversation. I think he's going to come out early. I just wasn't impressed by what I saw down under. Great guy, great competitor, great back in the stands as well with fans. People love him. But I just, you see him on social media, the workouts that he's doing in Kansas. He looks impressive, but I didn't see it on the floor. And I'm just wondering whether maybe it's a bit of stage fright. Are we going to see him, cut a little bit early? So that's my bold prediction. Not a good one that I hope doesn't happen. But yeah, Jacob Heppner out in the early rounds of cuts.
That's bold. I think I've already made a bold prediction, which is Ben Smith.
Every one of your predictions has been bold.
I'm pretty sure that's bold. But if I had to go bolder or something different, I think I would pick Laura Horvath getting out pretty early.
Okay.
I just, and we've talked about this entire season. I've not been impressed with what she's brought to the table. She's had a known weakness for a very long time, and it's either not being addressed or it's just not being fixed. It's one or the other, but she still can't press. And if the weakness shows up early, she's done. If the weakness shows up in event 1, she gets cut from the field. If the weakness shows up in event 2, she might be cut from the field.
Yeah.
If the weakness shows up in event 3, she might be cut from the field. So I'm going to say if a weakness shows up and it's an area where that she's consistently underperformed or not even performed at all in the sanctional season, then I'm going to say she's going home early.
But by the same token, you wouldn't be surprised to see her on the podium. It's just she was so consistent last year. It could be either way.
Good.
Man, I like those bold predictions. Yeah. So this one is kind of throwing a shot out in the dark, not necessarily athlete specific, but I have a feeling we're going to see an all-time record for most weight lifted in a barbell event broken at the CrossFit Games this year.
Bronislav?
So there's some dudes in the field, whether as individuals or as team members, some guys like Bronislav Alenkowicz, Tola Morakinia, that, when a heavy barbell shows up, they're licking their chops and they're looking at 100 points. So I think regardless of what it is, we're going to see a world record setting, for at least for the CrossFit Games is concerned, performance on the barbell by an athlete. We don't know what it is yet, but that'll be my guess. Maybe it's not that bold, but it's the best I could think of at the moment. But yeah, so that's going to be it for our first show this weekend. Just to remind you guys, we'll be coming back to you tomorrow morning at 8:30 a.m. That's local time, Central Standard Time. We'll be kind of leading into the competition. Hopefully we know that a little bit more than we do now in terms of workouts and schedules and event descriptions. If you guys have been following along the whole time, I want to apologize for some technical difficulties. We're working out a new system. We'll get that all ironed out for you guys in the coming days. We'll be able to bring you guys some graphics, video packages, all that good stuff as well. For Justin LaFranco, Brittany Klein, I'm Tommy Marquez. Thanks for tuning in this first time, and we'll see you guys tomorrow morning.